A judge dismisses the majority of Kari Lake's lawsuit, but allows her to go analyze ballots on 2 specific counts. So we're actually going to get to see something coming out of this. And let's go. Let's see what it's going to be. So we'll talk just a bit about what did make it through, what didn't make the cut, why, and what this means for the trial. In other news, new Twitter files drop and shows that the FBI paid Twitter millions and influenced executives to make sure that the Hunter Biden story didn't come to light. Coming as pretty much no surprise to anybody, but we'll talk about that, what it means and where we go with that. Massachusetts court rules against medically assisted death in a rare form of good decision coming from the state of Massachusetts, so we'll talk just a bit about that and what's happening with that. And the Supreme Court will be considering Biden's student loan plan in February, and it does look like the vast majority of it is going to be dismantled. So, well, we're going to be hearing some crying and tears coming from this as soon as the mainstream media lets this come to light. It is going to be all this and more. We are back. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Troll the ancient Yuletide Carol. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar, and we have got a fair amount of news to go over here. It's a bit of a shotgun blast today, actually. It's kind of just a little bit everywhere. There's a little bit of stuff about Kari Lake. There's some stuff about the budget. There's some stuff about the vaccine mandates and the fact that they got overturned. But, there's no really big story here today. And we are coming into the holiday season, by the way. If I do start to sound a little bit hoarse, I have so far been the only person in the place that I work in my new job that has not got sick since I've been there. But I do think that there is something a little bit mild creeping in there as well. So we might have a little bit more throat clearing than normal. Plus, I did just stop smoking again. So, there's that aspect and avenue to it as well. But we've got some stuff to go over here today. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Kari Lake. We'll talk about Massachusetts and one of the few times that I'm going to praise that state. My former state, by the way. And we'll be talking about a host of other things over here on Contemporary. Before we get started, make sure you go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys. Go check out Tweets by Brit, Mr. Behavior, and the No Gimmicks Podcast. Go check out all that great programming as we try to assemble a team of people who are ready to come forward and bring you a set of news and culture from the common man for the common man. That's right. It is not a time where you should be getting your news and your culture from people who have to wear a suit, or who can wear a suit rather, and choose to wear a suit that costs more than your house. You should be listening to people who have made some of the same decisions that you have to make on a daily basis. And that's what we're trying to provide you here as we start to work, bringing you a website, an aggregator, and a place for you to get said news from the common man for the common man. So go check out all that great programming. As we go down, look into the news. We are going to start today with the stocks and the finance. I've actually got some stuff on housing here today as well. So we will see what's coming with that, and let's get started. Starting with the Dow. The Dow did wind up closing up yesterday, but it has been a tumultuous day for sure, starting out in the red. Actually, it started off shooting up to the green, but then dropped to the red again. It did spend the majority of the day in the green, but it's barely a green. Raising today to 92.20 over yesterday's close. That is up about 0.25% at 32,849.74. There have been some things that just went in either direction for it, and it's really hard to get a handle on what's happening here, as Christmas shopping will be driving some of the stocks, bonds, and markets up here. Meanwhile, the fact that Christmas shopping is getting more and more expensive is going to be carrying some of that down here. But we'll see what happens with that, where this goes, and what the investors think is going to happen in the next 24 hours. Looking at your Bitcoin, which today took a fairly significant jump as compared to yesterday. The Bitcoin is up to $16,900 and 90 US cents. That is up $461 and 20 US cents, or 2.8%, almost 3% rise in Bitcoin today. So I don't know if people are going to be getting it for Christmas, if people are going to be, what they're going to be doing with some of this stuff, but it does look like the Bitcoin is looking positive for right now. We'll continue to see what happens with that. And the gas. I know that Gaines likes to see the gas because he's talking about it here. On the Isthmus in Madison, and even though I don't live close to Madison anymore, we'll still use that as the benchmark because we've been watching Madison for almost 3 years now. Pretty much about the time it got to the bottom, we started watching the gas prices to see what they were going to do. And we've been watching them from the Madison, Wisconsin area. The gas prices on the Isthmus are at $2.68 right now. Entering the Isthmus, that quick trip actually went up just slightly. The BP coming out of Madison on the east side is still at $2.79. On the west side, $2.80 and $2.80 for both the quick trips, which means the one rose up to match the other. The Speedway is also at $2.80. So it looks like your holiday gas prices are going to be, if you're going through Madison, right around the $2.80 mark. Now, as a person who hates paying taxes to the County of Dane and the City of Madison, I don't recommend that you buy your gas in Madison, no matter what the price is, but definitely is something that you should be looking at. In fact, I would almost recommend buying it in La Crosse if it was me. But that's because I see it up here, and it's actually a little bit lower up here than it is down there. But, excuse me. And if you are coming this direction, I would almost, and again, I hate to tell you to go spend your money in a blue stronghold, but Minnesota still has their gas tax suspended, so I would even jump over the border and go grab it in Minnesota if you're coming this direction. But hey, that's just me. This is not official financial advice. That's just me observing what it is that I see. Let's grab our article, our daily article from IBD, and see what it is that they have to say. Dow futures rise on Nike as market rally snaps losing streak. Tesla meltdown continues, from Ed Carson. Dow futures rose slightly after hours, along with the S&P and the NASDAQ futures, with FedEx and Nike earnings leading the charge. The stock market rally bounced modestly on Tuesday, snapping a 4-day losing streak. Meanwhile, Apple flirted with undercutting its bear market low a day after Amazon did. Tesla continued to plunge. Tesla stock now has round-tripped gains since the August 2020 stock split. On the plus side, oil field services plays such as Schlumberger. Wasn't that the dude from Office Space? That's probably one of the few movies I've actually seen. Halliburton, of course, defense contracting, and Frac are showing strength, with Schlumberger stock and AC/DC stock flashing early buy points on Tuesday. On earnings, Dow Jones giant Nike and FedEx reported earnings late Tuesday, also offering some sense about the holiday shopping season. Nike earnings and sales topped views, but inventory surged 43% versus a year earlier. Margins fell due to markdowns. Nike stock spiked more than 10% after hours, signaling a move back above the 200-day line. Shares edged up 0.2% to 103.21 on Tuesday. Give me just a moment, please. I hope I'm not getting what everybody else at work has. FedEx earnings topped views, but revenue fell short. FDX stock rose solidly, not FTX, FDX, although FTX probably doesn't have anywhere to go but up. In extended trade, shares closed down 2.6% to 164.35 below the 50-day line. And we got this late enough that we can actually look at the futures. So on the futures, Dow futures climbed 0.4 versus fair value with Nike offering a boost. S&P advanced 0.3. NASDAQ 100 futures rose 0.4. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So that is our market watch here, but I want to talk a bit about housing for just a moment, if you'll stay with me for this. From The Ascent, a service of the Motley Fool, and this is, by the way, a heavily advertised and heavily advertising article, but it does offer some points into what is going to be possibly happening in the markets. Let's read. Bank of America CEO issues dire warning for housing market. Prepare for 2 more years of pain. From Maury Beckman. It's been a really tough go for prospective home buyers since mid-2020. For the past 2 years and change, the real estate market has sorely lacked inventory that's driven home prices upward and forced buyers into countless bidding wars. This year, mortgage rates are also higher than they've been in decades, adding another layer of difficulty to an already hard situation, and unfortunately, it doesn't look like the housing market conditions are about to get any more favorable for buyers anytime soon. In a recent interview with CNN, Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan said he's concerned the housing market will continue to challenge buyers in the coming years. Moynihan pointed to sky-high mortgage rates as a reason buyers might continue to struggle, especially first-time buyers with more limited financial resources. Moynihan also said there could be 2 more years of pain in the housing market before things cool off and homes become more available and affordable. That's a tough pill to swallow. But should today's buyers give up purchasing a home? Not necessarily. Why homeownership may be out of reach, or may not be out of reach, until housing inventory picks up to a notable degree. Home prices are likely to remain high, and inventory may not increase a lot anytime soon. But that doesn't mean you're doomed as a buyer. We could see a modest uptick in real estate inventory in the coming year, and as mortgage rates present affordability issues for buyers, some might choose to... Excuse me again. I think I got it, you guys. I do. We could see a modest uptick in real estate inventory in the coming year, and as mortgage rates present affordability issues for buyers, some might choose to exit the real estate market for the time being. If those things happen and there are fewer buyers to compete with, it could do the trick of bringing home prices down to more affordable levels so that even if borrowing rates remain high, home ownership is attainable. It's also important to remember that if you can afford a home based on today's prices and borrowing rates, you can always sign a mortgage and refinance down the line, which is one of the solutions that I offered out as well. As I said, if you already own, you should probably stay put, and this is not official financial advice. But if you already own, you should really stay put at this point. But if you are first-time home buying, or you need to, for whatever reason, move to follow a job or anything else, if you can afford it as is, then yeah, go ahead and try to refinance it. The only problem, and this especially is going with first-time versus going with getting a new home if you're not a first-time buyer, is the fact that if the prices drop along with the market before the interest rates drop, you could be looking at a situation where you might not be able to get that kind of equity back out of your house, of what you owe into it. So that is something to pay attention to and keep in mind as you go into this, and there might be a double-edged sword with something like this. Granted, that may not happen for a couple of years, but you can swing a higher mortgage payment for a while. You'll have a chance to get into a place of your own, build equity in it, and enjoy the different tax breaks homeowners get to benefit from. If you're in a strong position to buy a home, then you don't necessarily need to sit out the market for the next 2 years, but if you're not as confident about your ability to afford a home, then waiting a couple of years could make sense. Buying a home is a huge undertaking, even when the housing market conditions are far more buyer-friendly than they are today. And so if you're iffy about the idea of committing to a home purchase and the ongoing mortgage payments and expenses that come with it, hold off. So that's what the Motley Fool has to say to you, and It does seem to be a lot of what it is that I was saying earlier when we were talking about this last week, and I was first talking about the fact that I might be into a place like that. And they're talking about a $400,000 house, but also on considerably better credit than I have. But that's what we see coming off of that. Let's get into the main news of the day, and before we get into the Kari Lake stuff, I want to talk just a bit about what is in the spending bill that they're debating over whether or not to vote on here at this point. And Mitch McConnell himself might actually come in and cast the tie-breaking vote. We talked a bit about this yesterday, and the people who were saying that the border crisis will be owned by the GOP if they do vote to do this and not wait or at least make a short-term stopgap until Republicans are in control of the House. But let's read here from the Daily Wire. Pride Centers and a Wax Museum. Here are the woke projects buried in Congress's spending bill. From Virginia Kruta. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill touted a $1.7 trillion, that is with a T, funding package on Tuesday, with both Democrats and Republicans claiming victories, which is designed to avert the government shutdown when the current funding expires at midnight on Friday. The text of the legislation is some 4,000 pages long, leaving very little hope for lawmakers, even with the help of aides, to get through the text prior to voting on the massive package. And there's Rand Paul with the bill. I wonder how long it would take the clerk to read this. With the signs out there, omnibus. Danger, $1.7 trillion of hazardous debt. What else is there? Danger, deadly hazard. Do you really think there is a single person in the United States who actually believes that Congress is filled with speed readers capable of digesting thousands of pages in a matter of hours? Probably not, Dr. Rand Paul. I really like this card. Rand, get with me. What is it going to take to let me have this cart with all your decorations? Warning, greatest threat to our national security, $1.7 trillion added to the debt. Omnibus, beware of the hazard of $1.7 trillion added to the national debt. And I think they just repeat, oh, he's got the bankruptcy card from Monopoly too, but I can't read that one. That one's, looks like it's got some obstruction to it. I can't see what's on that one. And according to the Heritage Foundation, the omnibus bill may not have time. They may not have time to read. Is packed with woke pet projects. Among them are a number of LGBTQIRAMIGTBOLLAIUTMPYAXTRZ, sometimes Y, projects, from pride centers to museums and anti-racism initiatives, according to a thread shared on Twitter on Tuesday. The thread began with a headline, in all capital letters, "Woke Priorities in the Omnibus." Here are just a few earmarks, aka your taxpayer dollars set aside for special interest or projects, we found in the 1,455-page spending bill that are funding the left's extreme agenda using your money, it read. An addendum to the thread later noted the number of pages had been a typo and the actual size of the bill was much larger. The bill, which was released early this morning, is a whopping 4,155 pages. Here we go. Heritage Foundation, $1.2 million for the LGBTQIRAMGTBOQLXTBAEMTOIRPXYCZ, sometimes Y, Pride Centers. $1.2 million for services for DACA recipients, aka helping illegal aliens with taxpayer funds at San Diego Community College. $477,000 for the Equity Institute in Rhode Island to indoctrinate teachers with anti-racism virtual labs. What followed? is a list of woke agenda projects along with their respective price tags, which areas of the country stood to benefit from the omnibus money. So I don't know how long this thread is. Let's open this up. So they got through it in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tweets. We read this one. 1 million for Zora's House in Ohio, co-working and community space for women and gender expansive people of color. 3 million for the American LGBTQIRAGPTXTOIMITL RA6125 plus AZ sometimes Y Museum in New York City. 3.6 million for a Michelle Obama trail in Georgia. KTZed has got to be excited for that one. 750,000 for the I'm not going to do the whole acronym again, even though I'm pretty much making it up as I go every time. There's never an inconsistency. I don't know if you guys know that or not. For the non-conforming house in Albany, New York. 2 million for the Great Blacks in Wax Museum in Baltimore. Wow. This is actually a thing that's happening, folks. 856,000 for the LGBTQIRABYTMW R71265 LTAXT by 214 EOU sometimes Y Center in New York. 750,000 for the Trans-Latin Coalition to provide workforce development programs and supportive services for transgender and gender nonconforming and intersex immigrant women in Los Angeles. And that's just a few of the things that are on there. Now, a thing that I point out, and we talked about this during the omnibus spending with Trump, while I don't recommend anybody go to 4chan, because, well, I'm not going to lie, they terrify me. There is probably a thread at some point in 4chan that is picking this apart and having the internet autists do it for us. And they'll go through there and they'll point out everything that's in there. One person can't get through 4,000 pages in a few hours to go vote on it. But the weaponized autism in 4chan can divide the labor among millions of people to do it. And I do have to wonder what kind of things they're coming up with on that. Let's see. Rand Paul ripped into the omnibus during a Tuesday press conference, arguing leadership should have presented a plan when it was due on September 30th, as it is every year, instead of delaying until the last minute and trying to rush through a bill that no one would have the time to read. Let's listen.
I brought with me the Omni, 4,155 pages. When was it produced? In the dead of the night, 1:30 in the morning when it was released. Now, people argue that it's conservatives' fault. You don't have the Christmas spirit. Somehow you're holding up government. Well, whose job is it to produce this? The people in charge of spending. The people in charge of both of the parties. When did they know that this would be necessary? Well, it's in the law, September 30th. You got 9 months, almost 10 months, to produce a plan, to have a spending plan. They weren't ready on September 30th, so they voted themselves 90 more days. They weren't ready last week either, so they voted themselves another week. And now we have it at 1:30 in the morning this morning. But what's the clamor? The clamor is to vote. Vote now. Let's get it done. Why are you standing in the way of spending? Well, the real question is this. What is more dangerous? What is more dangerous to the country? $1.1 trillion in new debt, or as Republican leadership likes to say, oh, but it's a win. It's a big win. We're getting $45 billion for the military. So which is more important? Which threatens the country more? Are we at risk for being invaded by a foreign power if we don't put $45 billion into the military? Or are we more at risk by adding to a $31 trillion debt? I think the greatest risk to our national security is our debt. The process stinks. It's an abomination. It's a no-good, rotten way to run your government. $6 trillion entity, and they want 24 hours to process this, and then they want to go forward. I will be demanding 2 amendments. One, that this goes against the budget rules. The pay-go rules say you can't do this. You can't have all this new spending unless it's offset. We will also be demanding that the pay-go rules are increased. Instead of taking 60 votes to evade the rules, we're going to ask that it be a 2/3 vote to evade the rules. The American people don't want this. They're sick and tired of it. They're paying for it through the nose with inflation. Adding $1 trillion to the deficit will simply fuel the fires that are consuming our wages and consuming our retirement plans. It's a terrible system. Someone needs to stand up. We're standing up, and we're going to say no.
I noticed Ron Johnson's going to be the next one to step up and speak there, which, I mean, of course he is, because standing up against the government spending is the current way to make himself the most powerful. Good job, Ron Johnson. I can't believe we in Wisconsin couldn't come back and find somebody better than that asshole. Excuse my language. But that is our spending bill and some of the things that are in it. I might actually just run to 4chan and see what is in there. Now, McConnell, on the other side, is also coming in and defending this here. McConnell talking about providing assistance for Ukrainians to help defeat the Russians is the number one priority in the United States right now. No, it's not. I can tell you that's not, without even coming and polling, what the number one priority in the United States right now is. The number one priority in the United States is trying to get ready for Christmas. I don't... Even on Twitter, with the leftoids being spammed into us, I don't hear a lot of people talking about the Ukraine anymore on Twitter. Have you guys noticed that on Twitter? That's how we see the challenges confronting the country at the moment. Let's listen to the Turtle Man.
Making sure the Defense Department can deal with the major threats coming from Russia and China, providing assistance for the Ukrainians to defeat the Russians. That's the number one priority for the United States right now, according to most Republicans. That's sort of how we see the challenges confronting the country at the moment. Making sure the Defense Department...
What Republicans are saying that we need to spend more in Ukraine? That's like the opposite of what the majority of Republicans are saying, unless, again, you're only talking to your neoconservative warmongering buddies who want to come out here and spend all kinds of money on the military and go bomb people. Now, they're not brown kids this time, so there's that aspect of things, but no, this is not a priority, according to most Republicans. D. Oliver tags Leader McConnell in the reply and says, "This is not true. The number one is stop spending reckless amounts of money in corrupt nations and proxy wars. 2, stop with the treasonous failure at the border. And 3, lower the debt." That's 3 that I agree with, right there. And Marty, without a Twitter profile picture, says, number one priority is to take turtle soup off the menu. Golf clap. Suburban Woman for Joe says, Ukraine is very important. Suburban Woman for Joe couldn't find Ukraine on a map in 2020 and thought it was just a place that Republicans were making up to try to get Trump's agenda passed. So that's what we have on spending for the day. Let's talk Kari Lake. From the Hill. Arizona judge dismisses most of Kari Lake's lawsuit challenging election results. From Zach Schoenfield. An Arizona judge has dismissed most of Lake's election lawsuit contesting the victory of her opponent, Governor-elect Katie Hobbs, after Lake for weeks seized on unproven... It's the Hill, so we have to come back and wade through all the editorializing. Seized on unproven voter fraud allegations. Lake had asked the judge to set aside Hobbs' certified victory based on 10 counts, alleging election officials in Maricopa, which compromises most of the state's population, committed misconduct and tabulated hundreds of thousands of illegal ballots. Maricopa Superior Court Judge Peter Thompson on Monday evening dismissed 8 of the 10 counts, ruling they did not fall under the proper criteria to bring election challenges under Arizona law, even if true. So they did not merit further consideration. But Thompson allowed the trial to move forward on 2 other counts that, he said, if proven, could state a claim under the statute governing election challenges, alleged international interference by election officials affecting Maricopa County ballot printers, and chain of custody violations. Lake, an ally of former President Trump, who promoted unfounded claims of voter fraud in the 2020 election and declined to commit to accepting this year's results prior to Election Day, must now prove those 2 allegations in a trial scheduled later this week. Lake framed Monday's ruling as a win for her campaign, writing on Twitter, "Our election case is going to trial. Katie Hobbs' attempt to have our case thrown out failed. She will still have to take the stand and testify. Buckle up, America. This is far from over." Now, let's talk about the 2 that are allowed to go through for just a moment. Intentional interference by election officials affecting Maricopa ballot printers, which does seem to be the crux of the argument. So it actually is probably a win that this is what's going through. What most of us saw on Election Day when we tuned in and we started looking at the news from the day early in the morning is the fact that, yes, there were problems in Maricopa County. We didn't even know what they were right away, but within a couple hours where you're hearing, oh, the ballots are having problems, you can either come back in and, get back in line, or you can put the ballots that did mark with a not dark enough ink into box number 3, and we totally promise they'll get counted later. We'll just send them down to Phoenix and they'll get counted later, we promise. And then chain of custody violations, which that will have to do with the mail-in ballots and the situation that's going on with that and whether or not those were properly handled, which I think that for me is the more important issue on the mail-in side, whether or not we actually had a proper chain of custody from beginning to end, from voter to mailbox or to drop box, and then from drop box back to Phoenix or wherever they're going to get counted. Since the midterms, Lake has railed against the Maricopa County officials and Hobbs, calling the election botched and a sham, as she vowed to appeal her case to the Supreme Court if necessary. Maricopa, as well as Hobbs in both her capacities as Secretary of State and gubernatorial candidate, dispute Lake's claims and had asked the judge to dismiss all 10 counts. But again, as I mentioned yesterday, that's a standard practice in any lawsuit. The first thing that you do is you come out and say, hey, judge, this is meritless. Can you just dismiss this and we'll be on with our days? And the judge then decides whether or not there's enough sufficient standing to go through on anything. But, I mean, that's not a surprise either way. Hobbs in the county, in asking for the complete dismissal, argued that many of Lake's allegations were based on procedures put in place well before last month's election, saying those claims had to be brought before Election Day. They also contend that Lake's campaign arguments are also unfounded and would fail on their merits in trial, and, well, so does the Hill. Because, as usual, the first thing that we look at and we see and we hear when we look at things like this is the Hill is a very, very left-leaning outlet. So they're going to put their editorial spin on absolutely everything. If there's anything rotten in Arizona, it's what this contest represents, an attorney for Hobbs said at the hearing. For the past several years, our democracy and its basic guiding principles, and this is another situation where they don't actually mean our democracy, they mean our hegemony, have been under sustained assault from candidates who just cannot or will not accept the fact that they lost. The judiciary has served as a bulwark against these efforts and undo our democratic system from within. So that's some of the history on this. Fox News will add a little bit more to this argument here. Reading from there, Arizona judge rules 2 of Kari Lake's election challenge claims can go to trial. From John Salvatore, an Arizona judge ruled that 2 out of the 10 claims brought by former Republican gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake challenging Katie Hobbs can go to trial. Peter Thompson dismissed 8 out of the 10 counts of Lake's election lawsuit, ruling they did not fall under the proper criteria to bring election challenges under Arizona law. The 2 counts Judge Thompson ruled can go to trial involve printers malfunctioning on election day and ballot chain of custody. Lake claimed that printers that malfunctioned were not certified and had vulnerabilities that made them susceptible to hacking. She also claimed that printers malfunctioned because of intentional action. Judge Thompson said that Lake must prove at trial that someone interfered with the printers in violation of Arizona law, that the interference caused her to lose votes, and that the lost votes affected the outcomes of the election. As for the chain of custody issue, Lake claimed employees of the county's ballot contractor violated the county election manual when they added ballots of family members and also failed to secure the inbound receipt delivery. Judge Thompson said whether the county complied with its own manual and applicable statutes is a dispute of fact rather than one of law. That's a fair point, actually. A list of the 8 dismissed counts includes count 1, violation of freedom of speech. Yeah, I can see why that one got dismissed. Count 3, invalid signatures on mail-in ballots. So basically, they can't go through and analyze and signature match, which I don't agree with. I do think that that should be a thing, and should be a thing on both directions. When you're doing a strict signature system, if you do have to have a mail-in ballot system, which we don't have to have, but if for whatever reason you feel that you need to have one of the things that should be is signature match, equal protection, due process, secrecy clause, incorrect certification, inadequate remedy, and constitutional rights. I can see where most of these got thrown out, especially under constitutional rights and inadequate remedy. Especially with count 9, inadequate remedy requires there to be proof that there was intentional tampering to begin with. So the first thing they need to do is come out and check and see whether or not they can find intentional tampering. Which realistically, again, I believe that there were. Statistically, it does seem like a lot of these places were in areas, especially with the printer errors and happening at multiple sites, that did tend to favor Republicans more than Democrats. Now, will this go anywhere? Again, I don't believe it will. I believe there is, I don't know if we're in the 90% chance, but I would say there's probably a better than 75% chance. Katie Hobbs is sworn in as governor in January. But yesterday I thought it was 85%. So we'll see what happens with this and where this goes. I don't know that Lake's lawyers would be going through with this if they didn't think that they had the goods, but we'll continue to watch and see what happens. Reading from The Blaze, talking about the criminal charges. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. Trump response to January 6th committee's criminal referrals. From Alex Nitzberg. Former President Trump responded on Monday after the House Unselect Committee that investigated the Selfie Fest announced criminal referrals. While the panel is recommending that the Justice Department go after Trump, the DOJ is not required to follow the congressional panel's recommendations. These folks don't get it that when they come after me, People who love freedom rally around me. It strengthens me. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. Americans know that I pushed for 20,000 troops to prevent violence on January 6th, and then I went on television and told everyone to go home. Trump wrote on Truth Social. The January 6th committee included various Democrats and 2 GOP lawmakers who have been outspoken Trump critics. Yes, we know who's all on there. Most of the rest of this is history. I do and I don't think that he's in a position to say, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. Because that is going to be the thing that holds and hangs over him through his presidency. Now, as far as the criminal referral, when I look at strategy, when I look at what's to come, I actually honestly believe, after I look at this externally, that the Democrats that are in charge don't want this to go to the DOJ and go to trial before the election. Because they're not looking to actually put Trump in prison. And this is something that the leftoids need to understand when they're looking at this and looking at strategy. The Democrats don't actually want Trump to go to prison. They want him to run. They want him to run all the way up and be the nominee. But they want him to do so with this hanging up over his head. With them being able to come out and say on their little advertisements, their little commercials, oh, this candidate here, he might be running from prison. Look at this. This is a threat to the American democracy. Do you really want to vote for this person here? But they do want him to get to the end. They want the states to suspend their primaries. They want him to be the one that's standing up there. I would bet money. I actually have to go back against Ron Helton on this one. I'd probably put, I'm not in a position to bet right now. I went from having a weekly paycheck to a bi-weekly paycheck, and it's been kicking my ass. But once I get paid, once I start to see where it is that I go, I would be willing to put down a little bit of money and say, hey, you know what? I don't think that Merrick Garland's going to put up the charges. And if he does, it won't be until October of 2024. That'll be your October surprise. If he does it at all, that'll be your October surprise. But that's what we have for that. Stacey Abrams having a little bit of problems from Axios. Scoop. Stacey Abrams' campaign in debt after blowout loss from Emma Hurt. After raising more than $100 million in her second bid to be Georgia governor, the Abrams campaign owes more than $1 million in debt to vendors. Two-time campaign manager Lauren Wargo confirmed to Axios. Abrams has been heralded for her fundraising prowess and had brought in donations at the presidential level earlier this year. But money became so tight that most of the 180 full-time staffers were given an abrupt paycheck cutoff date. Just a week after the November election. I'm not surprised. I'm not shocked at all. People have told me that they have no idea how they're going to pay their rent in January, one former staffer told Axios. It was more than unfortunate. It was messed up. Well, I mean, that's interesting. When did I do this kind of stuff? I'm trying to think of what my timeline was when I started moving here, but I know that I had pointed out the fact that I needed to be here for an election live stream. When was that? Was that when I went to take my P-test? I think it was. Yeah, it was. It was when I went to go take my P-test. And I was first asked, do you have any pending vacation that may... No, it wasn't. It wasn't when I went to take my P-test. Well, I mean, it was, but it wasn't when they were asking when it could be my start date. It was Okay, so I went because my old job I didn't work on Mondays. Obviously, you guys remember that. That's why we did the game streams on Monday nights, and that's why KTZed Redemption was on Monday night. But I had to, for whatever reason, come across the state to go take my P-test because they couldn't find a vendor down where I was. And I remember telling the HR lady that I couldn't come up because she asked me. I called on a Monday and said I'm ready to go accept the job, and she said, well, when can you take the P-test? I said, can you get it set up for today? She said, I can get it for today or tomorrow. Would you prefer today or tomorrow? I said, I can't tomorrow because I'm doing a midterm live stream for like 9 hours. And I think that's about how long we went, too. No, it wasn't that long. So my Tuesday is shot already. I have to be sitting back here in my chair at 4 o'clock tomorrow, so we can't do any of that. But I mean, just in there, and it took me a long time to go back and get a new job, and these people don't have a new job yet? Really? I keep hearing from the Biden admin that they added 65 trillion new jobs out there. You guys can't get one? Girl Wargo told Axios that a cavalcade of negative press and negative polling made fundraising difficult in the final months. She said the campaign had engaged brokers to sell their donor and voter contact databases to try to pay down the debt over time. Which again, they're selling your data. We did not just lose, we got blown out, she said. It was the most suboptimal situation to be in, and we will be dealing with that situation for some time. Of course, I would have loved to do things a lot differently, Girl Wargo said, but I had to move as fast as possible. We tried to do the best that we could to make sure that help would be there for folks, she said, pointing to health insurance benefits that lasted through November. Brian Kemp's campaign staff was paid through November, plus bonuses. Staff for both Herschel Walker and Raphael Warnock are being paid through December, all according to campaign officials. Well, Warnock and Walker were still campaigning into December, so I figured $100 million they should be able to pay me until December, said another former Abrams staffer. Well, surprise. What I'm actually a little bit surprised for reading this Axios article is they're not telling us what it is as far down as I've read, what it is that they owe $1 million on. Cash flow problems forced the campaign to cut its weekly ad buys from between $2 and $3 million in early October to $825,000 in the final week of that month. Kemp spent more than $2.6 million that same week. So, what do they still owe on? I think I'm gonna put a pin in this one and see if we can't find what it is that they still owe money on. So we'll check back with this tomorrow and see what I've found. I'll do a little bit of digging after we get off air here tonight, because I am most curious as to what they owe money on, less than how much money they still owe. Let's talk the Twitter files from the Daily Wire. New Twitter files show FBI paid Twitter millions influenced execs to censor Hunter Biden laptop story. From Ben Ziesloft. The bombshell story about Hunter Biden's laptop from the New York Post was censored after the FBI had repeatedly warned Twitter executives about foreign election interference campaigns, according to the 7th installment of the Twitter files, released on Monday. Previous editions of the project, revealed by independent journalists based on emails and other internal company documents provided by Twitter CEO Elon Musk, have shown that federal law enforcement policed content on the platform and asked executives to remove certain posts. Even before the New York Post released the now infamous October 2020 article, which included evidence that Hunter Biden introduced his father to Ukrainian businessmen, FBI officials pressured Twitter management to censor the story. Indeed, there existed an organized effort by representatives of the intelligence community aimed at senior executives at some news and social media companies to discredit leaked information about the Hunter Biden before and after it was published, according to independent journalist Michael Schellenberger. The FBI also paid Twitter more than $3.4 million for the legal process response, apparently referencing the time Twitter executives spent coordinating with the agency. FBI Special Agent Elvis Chan sent 10 documents to former Twitter head of site integrity Yoel Roth on the evening of October 13th, hours before the New York Post article would be released. Chan urged Roth that the documents were not spam and asked him to confirm a receipt. 2 minutes later, Roth replied, "Received and downloaded. Thanks." Beyond the communications, on October 13th, Schellenberger pointed to legal testimony from Roth and recent comments from Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg. They indicated that FBI officials had spent months priming Twitter and Facebook leadership to expect hack and leak operations from state actors ahead of 2020, even though Chan had admitted that no new intelligence had prompted them to reach such a conclusion. Twitter executives repeatedly reported that very little Russian activity of concern in the months before the election in emails to the FBI, according to Schellenberger, and told multiple news outlets that negligible election interference had been occurring through Russian accounts. Nevertheless, the FBI worked relentlessly to influence journalists and social media execs. One workshop hosted by the Aspen Institute in September of 2020 prepared Roth, the head of security policy at Meta, and the top national security reporters for the New York Times and the Washington Post on how to handle purported document dump from Burisma, the Ukrainian energy company where Biden provided scant services for enormous paychecks. Roth had also spurned previous attempts from the FBI to acquire data from Twitter, explaining that the company has a long-standing policy barring the use of data for surveillance and intelligence gathering purposes. Another internal email from Twitter's director of policy, Carlos Monje, sent to Roth confirmed that the intelligence community had been embarking on a sustained but uncoordinated campaign asking Twitter to share data. Chan arranged in July 2020 for Twitter executives to receive temporary security clearance 1 month before the election. Former FBI General Counsel Jim Baker had been working at the company, and there were so many FBI alums that they had started a new Slack channel to onboard new arrivals from the law enforcement agency. Roth and Chan eventually created virtual war room for internet executives, as well as officials from the FBI and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, also known as the ODNI. When the New York Post article was published on October 14th, Roth said in an email that the story was not clearly in violation of the company's hacked materials policy or anything else, but added that the story felt a lot like somewhat of a subtle leak operation. Baker insisted to Roth that the materials from the laptop were either faked or hacked, even though the New York Post had included a receipt from the repair shop signed by Hunter Biden. So there is a lot of stuff to this. This is not a small thing. And yes, it is very obvious from the contents of the laptop that Joe Biden was implicated in all of this. Now, when we look at something like this, yes, this does point to the fact that our government is compromised, which it has been for a while. But they're also going through private channels and even putting their own people in private channels to make sure that the narrative stays the way that they want the narrative to stay. And I think it is a part of the reason. I don't particularly trust Elon Musk either, but I believe that there is a reason now, especially as more of these stories come out, that Elon Musk was astroturfed into being the great evil who was going to cancel and suspend good, honest, liberal journalists, and he was going to destroy the world, and he was going to turn Twitter into a cesspool. To come out to get ahead of something like this, because I don't know if so many of the people on the ground knew that this was out there, but I'd be willing to bet that every journalist out there knew that this was out there. And that somebody that they couldn't control, and I don't think that they can control him, I think that he is out for himself, Excuse me, but I don't think that he is necessarily himself a government stooge. Somebody that they couldn't control was going to have access to this information and decide whether or not to read it, and once he read it, what to do with it. I don't think they wanted this getting out. But that's what they have for the Twitter files. Another big blow for Biden, coming from Reuters again. Appeals court says U.S. cannot mandate federal contractor COVID vaccines. I actually, and this is the funniest part of this, I have to stand against the appeals court on this one because I think that they can as the employer. I don't think it's right, but I think that as the employer that they can, and that would be my big encouragement not to go work for the government. But apparently the appeals court stands against me, but you still probably shouldn't go and work for the government. Let's see. From David Shepardson. A U.S. appeals court on Monday said the White House could not require federal contractors to ensure that their workers are vaccinated against the pinko pox as a condition of government contracts. When U.S. government has contracts with thousands of companies and courts have said issue could affect up to 20% of U.S. workers, a panel of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals voted 2-1 to uphold the lower court decision that blocked President Biden's September 2021 contractor vaccine executive order in those states after Louisiana, Indiana, and Mississippi brought suit to seek invalidation of the mandate. The court said that Biden wanted it to ratify an exercise of the proprietary authority that would permit him to unilaterally impose a healthcare decision on 1/5 of all employees in the United States. We declined to do so. The majority opinion was written by Judge Kurt Engelhardt, said a broad interpretation of the law could give Biden nearly unlimited authority to introduce requirements into federal contracts. Illustrating that point, he added, hypothetically, the president could mandate that all employees of federal contractors reduce their BMI below a certain number on the theory that obesity is a primary contributor to unhealthiness and absenteeism. The White House did not immediately comment. The Justice Department defended the mandate in a court filing, saying that Biden's order was justified under the Procurement Act. And, I mean, realistically, once again, they can. And, I mean, there are very few laws out there that would come back out and affect the ability for people to get a job in a federal contract. Now, when I look at something like this, especially having a mandate like this, rather than being something to try to get more people to go get the jab, I do think that this was a way to try to streamline and one-side the political nature of being a federal employee, which is already very one-sided to begin with. Oh, you don't want to get the jab? Well, I guess you don't want to be a federal employee that bad. Which I think that this is already really one-sided, and I think that a lot of people who are to the right of, let's say, Mao Zedong, are already excluded from the government, whether by personal choice or by HR and legal things and just a general atmosphere of not allowing people to get these federal contracts. But I do think that the vaccine mandate was put out there to further this and make sure that they're only getting one side of people on this. Now again, I would always encourage people not to work for the federal government because they don't have your best interest at heart and they don't really think you're essential. There are very few people in there that were still getting paychecks when the government was shut down, and you could be on that list. But you still have to do what is best for your family. I can't believe 1/5 of the nation works under a federal contract. That is craziness to me. But yes, the mandate is over if you're a federal contract. Here's an outlet we don't read from very much, from Slate. Coming back here talking about Biden's response to this. A federal court just took judicial obstruction of Biden's presidency to a new level. From Joey Madeira. The Fifth Circuit's latest salvo is even more dangerous than it seems. On Monday, a 3-judge panel on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit ruled 2-1 that Biden lacked authority to issue an executive order imposing a requirement on companies with whom the U.S. government contracts that employees be vaccinated against the pinko pox, affecting thousands of companies and up to 25% of the U.S. workforce. Responding to the demands of Louisiana, Indiana, and Mississippi, this is all the same information that was in the last article. Kept in place a ban on the implementation of Biden's executive order on the grounds that the president lacked authority to impose this requirement and that the order violated an obscure-sounding administrative law principle, the major questions doctrine. Monday's ruling, Louisiana versus Biden, has far-reaching consequences for federal contractors, but its legal substance also has stark and serious consequences for American law. Yeah, it means that Congress actually has to do the legislating, not let Biden go back and let his aides go back and do it through a pen and a phone. Federal agencies make and implement rules under authority that Congress has granted under statute. When a statute is ambiguous, courts have traditionally deferred to the agency's interpretation of it, since agencies have much more expertise than federal judges. Courts used to invoke... You remember when these assholes used to worship federal judges, by the way? When the judiciary was ruling in their favor? Courts used to invoke the major questions doctrine infrequently as a narrow exception for extraordinary cases, but in recent years, federal courts' invocations of this doctrine have vastly increased. They're increasingly unwilling to defer to agency interpretations on issues involving substantial economic or political significance. In cases like 2000's FDA versus Brown and Williamson Tobacco Corp. And 2020's West Virginia versus Environmental Protection Agency, the Supreme Court has been very vocal in demanding clear congressional authority for policymaking on issues of major economic and political significance, as they should, and I understand why Slate is so angry about this, because this means that when they get a person in that they like, that person doesn't just have carte blanche to make whatever laws and rules that they want. And this is even if you're working directly for the executive branch. Any laws, any regulations, any mandates that are coming that are affecting you directly, and I don't think, again, that the federal government should be making any rules that are affecting you directly. This is a little bit different because this is you voluntarily going to work for the federal government. Again, something else that I don't agree with, but in a situation like this is you voluntarily working for them, so this is your relationship with them. But regardless of that, this should come down to your representatives to the government making the decisions, not the government just unilaterally taking out a fountain pen, grabbing a piece of paper and saying, no unvaxxed workers. You have representatives to do that for you. And while they may suck, that's what their job is. They said that Biden responded to this. But I don't think that's in this article. But, yeah, Slate is big mad about this one. Here's a good application of health law, but also coming from a state level. Massachusetts Supreme Court Judicial Court rules against medically assisted death. For Mark Pratt. The highest court in Massachusetts said in a decision Monday that allowing doctors to prescribe a lethal dose of medication to mentally competent patients with terminal illnesses is not protected by the state constitution. Although we recognize the paramount importance and profound significance of all end-of-life decisions, after careful consideration, we conclude that the Mass Declaration of Rights does not reach so far as to protect physician-assisted suicide. The Supreme Court Judicial Court wrote in its decision, we conclude as well the law of manslaughter may prohibit physician-assisted suicide and does so without offending constitutional protections. The High Court, while noting the sensitive nature of the case, said the ultimate decision on physician-assisted suicide, also known as medical aid in dying, lies with the state legislature. The court said, every one of us is free to vote and encourage our legislators to enact laws and craft appropriate procedural safeguards with respect to one of the only human experiences that will affect us all. Unless, of course, you're Enoch. The court said that every one of us is free to... we read that one. The court also drew a distinction between physician-assisted suicide and patient's voluntary choice to refuse medical treatment or nutrition, saying, whereas withdrawing or withholding medical care is not the primary cause of patient's death, physician-assisted suicide is. Alright, why is this important? And this especially comes from a state like Massachusetts, where the state of Massachusetts really does have its hands into every medical decision, but this also goes on to Canada. I am against physician-assisted suicide. I'm against suicide in all forms. I'm going to say that right off the bat. And this, by the way, is coming from somebody who struggled with this for many, many, many years. If you are coming out and making that decision, even if you are on a terminal case, you're not in the frame of mind to be making that decision. But one of the things that's always bothered me, it's the same thing about free speech, it's the same thing about a number of things that the government gets involved in, is who decides. And who decides what's terminal and what isn't. I mean, I've seen people make miraculous recoveries. Now, not everybody's going to do that. But I mean, we heard the story out of Canada where a woman wanted a chairlift. And I believe she was a veteran on top of it. She wanted a chairlift from the government because they make the decisions and they control the healthcare in Canada. The government controls the healthcare. She wanted a chairlift and they said, hey, instead of getting a chairlift, have you ever thought about killing yourself? I'm probably going to get a strike on YouTube just for that statement. And yet Canada is doing it in legal parlance. We might have to go to the backup channel because I used that statement like that. And yet Canada is doing that in legal parlance. And when the government gets involved in it, it's even worse because, and again, like I sent out a tweet to Elaine, who helped me do the suicide prevention charity a couple years ago, and said, hey, you know, with hearing about all the government assisted stuff off of this and medically assisted stuff, it's time to go back and do another telethon. She said, oh, well, I'm against death, or I'm for death with dignity. I'm like, that's not what this is, especially when the government's involved. Are you serious right now? So I'm in favor of this because the government should not be deciding who lives and who dies, no matter what the situation is. And the government is deeply entwined in the healthcare system of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Another one from the Daily Wire, some FTX news. Democrats say they will return $3 million donated by FTX executives. From Ben Ziesloft. The Senate Majority PAC, which exists to elect Democrats, announced Tuesday that it will return $3 million donated by former FTX executives Sam Bankman-Fried and Nishad Singh. The two disgraced entrepreneurs, who respectively served as Chief Executive Officer and Director of Engineering for the bankrupt crypto company, had donated $1 million and $2 million to the Senate Majority PAC, which spent $160 million on the most recent midterms. The DNC, as well as the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee and the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, have issued similar commitments as bankruptcy lawyers attempted to claw back funds on behalf of customers and investors. Following serious allegations against FTX, Senate Majority PAC previously set aside the contribution amounts from Sam Bankman-Fried and Nishad Singh with the intention of returning the funds once we receive proper direction from federal law enforcement officials based on their legal proceedings. The spokeswoman for the Senate Majority PAC confirmed to CNBC in a statement on Tuesday. Bankman-Fried contributed roughly $39 million to Democrat nominees during the recent midterm election cycle, according to data from Open Secrets, which ranked him the country's sixth largest individual midterm donor. He said in a recent interview that he donated about the same amount to Republicans through dark money channels to avoid scrutiny from journalists. Beyond his extensive political donations, including contributions that rendered him the second largest contributor to the campaign behind President Biden, the self-proclaimed effective altruist also gave millions to media outlets and provided loans to the chief executive of crypto publication The Block. So a lot of this sounds like a lot of payoff to make sure that nobody was looking too close at some of the things that he did, while working to get neoconservative Republicans and corporate Democrats elected. Does he get Epsteined? I guess we'll find out. Now, I don't typically use the Washington Examiner because it's not green check verified, but I wanted to use this to kind of introduce the next two articles because the Supreme Court is bearing down on whether or not this actually is legal for Biden to do unilaterally with student debt. So let's read from here first. Supreme Court sets critical date for fate of student loan cancellation for millions. From Kaylin Deese, Supreme Court reporter. The Supreme Court released its Friday argument calendar Monday, revealing that justices will consider two major challenges to the Biden admin plan to forgive millions of borrowers' student debt on February 28th. Last week, the justices also decided to take up another loan-related challenge in Department of Education versus Brown, which two plaintiffs argued the Education Department wrongly did not offer a public comment period for the forgiveness plan. The first case to be argued, Biden versus Nebraska, surrounds six Republican-led states' claims that President Biden's plan violated the Separation of Powers and the Administrative Procedures Act. The plan, which would cost an estimated $400 billion, aims to forgive $10,000 in student loan debt for those making less than $125,000 or households with less than a quarter million in income. Meanwhile, Pell Grant recipients would receive an additional $10,000 in debt forgiveness. I'm actually a little bit curious about that aspect of it, because there did not seem to be any modifier for the Pell Grant side of it. So is this going to be $10,000 even if you make more than $250,000 in your household, if you're a Pell Grant recipient? But then you're just restricted to $10,000? I don't know the situation with that. The new case involves plaintiffs Myra Brown and Alexander Taylor Brown. Alexander Taylor Brown is not eligible for the forgiveness because her loans are maintained by commercial entities rather than the Education Department. I fall into that boat too, by the way. Meanwhile, Taylor is eligible for the $10,000 in relief, but not the $20,000 he would have gotten if he received a Pell Grant. The Supreme Court left Biden's plan blocked on December 1st and slated arguments over the matter for February, and in response to the Justice Department's request to lift a hold on an appeals court that ruled against the administration in the Nebraska case. The plan has been paused since mid-October and has been prevented from resuming by an additional appeals court and the justices' hold that prompted the administration to extend the moratorium on debt repayments until June 2023. Yeah, that's going to go on until there's a Republican president again. Whether or not they get the cancellation, which they probably won't, that pause is going to extend until a Republican is president. It doesn't matter who the Republican president is. That plan is going to go forward until a Republican is president again. So you will not see a single student loan bill until after the Biden admin is over. And then they're probably going to turn around and screw you on interest too. Mark my words. The Department of Education, in an attempt, by the way, to come back out and punish people for voting for a Republican no matter how bad things get, I can already see this formulating. They come back, it's been 4 years since you paid a student loan payment. Oh, I guess we're going to need to get that interest back after all. Oops, sorry. Oh, hey, here's another $100,000 or whatever it's going to be for some of these people. As far as the student debt crisis goes, I will point out my position on this, and that is that I don't believe that Biden by the Constitution, has the unilateral authority to do so. I believe the government does have the ability to do it, but not, and I don't think they should, but I think they have the ability, but it has to go through Congress. And it's not going to be a forgiveness like all of the idiot leftoids try to tell you that it's going to be. And that's a big thing that comes out of all of this, is the fact that they keep trying to tell you, oh, well, we're not going to add to the debt because we're not adding anything to it. We're not actually spending. He's just making that money go away. If you just take $400 billion out of an economy, what do you think that's going to do to the price of goods, first and foremost, and what do you think that's going to do to the currency? No, this is Biden taking taxpayer money and using it to go and pay off people's debts. Otherwise, he'd be bankrupting an entire sector of the banking industry that pays him. And that's not going to happen. Not from the Biden admin, especially. But using this to go back and lead into what I was saying off of this. Now, Congress does have the ability to come back out and say, okay, well, we can allocate this much money and we'll put it into our big omnibus spending bill that's at this point 7,000 pages long that no one's going to have time to read. And then that allocation there will go over to the Justice Department and pay off everybody's student debts. Except for the people who who have private loans, because we don't like those people because they don't typically vote Democrat. People like me, by the way. They could do that. The problem with that being is that a lot of these people who would vote for that do have to go back to their constituencies and wonder whether or not they're going to have a job. And the only people who can feasibly say for certain that they will are the people in the deepest blue districts of the deepest blue states. Anybody else who gets on board with that is going to be voted out. You're gone. But some more information on that coming from sources that are green check verified. From CNBC, Supreme Court likely to dismantle student loan forgiveness plan after it hears case, says Harvard Law professor. Excuse me. From Annie Nova. I don't know why I'm so gassy today. I haven't had anything carbonated for like 4 hours. The 9 justices of the Supreme Court have scheduled the high-profile arguments over Biden's student loan forgiveness plan for February 28th, meaning borrowers suspended in uncertainty about the fate of their debts will at least know more soon. Since Biden unveiled his plan, Republicans and conservative groups have filed at least 6 lawsuits to try to halt the policy, arguing it's an overreach of executive authority and unfair in a number of ways. 2 of those legal challenges have been successful in at least temporarily stopping the president's plan from going forward. The Biden admin has appealed those decisions, and the country's highest court has announced it will have the final say on the policy, which will remain on hold until then. The justices will consider the lawsuits brought by 6 GOP-led states, which argue that the forgiveness will disrupt state entities that profit from federal student loans, as well as a lawsuit backed by the Job Creators Network Foundation, a conservative advocacy group featuring 2 borrowers in Texas who are partially or fully left out of the president's relief. The fact that the justices have agreed so quickly to take both cases suggests that they're eager to deliver a decisive ruling on the policy involving more than 30 million Americans, said Lawrence Tribe, a Harvard law professor. Like other legal experts, Tribe doesn't have much hope the plan will survive the Supreme Court. It's basically put the program in a deep freeze until it proceeds to most likely dismantle it, Tribe said. Now, and I've seen Lawrence Tribe pop up on Twitter before, and he is a hard leftoid. Like a hard leftoid. Higher education expert Mark Kantrowitz agreed that the eagerness to make a ruling doesn't bode well for proponents of the president's plan because ruling against forgiveness is less complicated. Dan Ehrman, a law professor at Northeastern, also predicted the Supreme Court will rule against Biden. He said conservative justices believe the government agencies exert too much authority and violate the separation of powers, which they do. That is correct. Yet Tribe said plaintiffs are dressing up their frustrations with seeing students get relief in legal arguments about the separation of power. They think of this as an elite selfish kids are getting at the head of the line when others have had to repay their loans, Tribe said, adding that Republicans have not challenged when other groups get relief. Well, they should. Government shouldn't be giving out relief to people. Plain and simple. But the fact that these people, especially these far leftoids, look at this and say this is probably going to get dismantled is the biggest indicator to me that this is already illegal. And I think it's done for, which is good. Once again, the House, with the power of the purse, if they think this is a thing that they can do and maintain their majority, then that's where this should be going through. But I anticipate that a part of the reason that this is trying to go through the executive branch, and always has since the beginning of the student debt crisis, is because the speakers, whether it be Pelosi or speakers prior, truly believe that the Democrats will lose their majority if some of their people have to go back to their constituencies and say, hey, I voted to forgive the student loan debt. Which boils down to, I voted to take your taxpayer money and give it away to people for student loans. An interesting side note to this coming from the USA Today, what happened to Biden's free college plan, cutting the cost of higher ed out of Fed's reach? Well, it's simple. Nothing is free. We've already reduced the free education that we get from the K through 12 level into something, a diploma that you can take home and pee on. Because I've seen what people getting out of high school and actually graduating can accomplish in the real world, and it ain't pretty, folks. It ain't pretty. From Chris Quintana. President Biden's plan for mass student loan debt relief may be a bust, but the attempt to wipe billions in education-related debt was an acknowledgement the way the U.S. pays for higher education is not working. It is, but not in the reason that you think. Why else would nearly $400 billion in student loan debt relief be necessary? Biden himself stated in announcing his plan that an entire generation is now saddled with unsustainable debt in exchange for an attempt at least to get a college degree. The burden is so heavy that even if you graduate, he said in August, you may not have access to the middle-class life that the college degree once provided. Questions about making college more affordable for a wide swath of students remain perennially and stubbornly unanswered, and few policymakers have offered long-term solutions. Instead, the federal government is largely focused on addressing the impact of student loans on the roughly 44 million people holding education-related debts. The administration has streamlined the public service loan forgiveness program, canceled the debts of students taken advantage of in predatory colleges. Yeah, I'd like to see that one come too, because, well, I'm not going to lie, that's what I was in. That's what I went to, and I won't say the college name on air, but yes, I went to a predatory college as well. And unveiled new income-driven repayment plan that could reduce how much borrowers have to pay. It even made it easier for those with student debt to discharge their obligations via bankruptcy. something that had once seemed impossible but has been overshadowed by the president's plan for mass student loan forgiveness. None of these measures addresses the upfront cost of college that students, and in some states, their families, confront, in part because the federal government has limited ability to push prices down. That is a bullcrap lie, by the way. Colleges set tuition independent of the federal government. Lie again. And public institutions, especially, are likely to increase prices when the states cut spending on higher education. Lie number 3. Let me explain something to you here. And I've said this before. And usually when I talk about this, I get some collegiate person out there who's higher educated, who still knows nothing out there, knows nothing about finance and economics, who tells me that I just hate education, and that it's an elitist mindset, that I must be rich that I was able to go to college, which, when they find out that I went to trade school, kind of confuses them a little bit, that I must be coming from a rich family that I was able to go to college, paid for by my rich parents. Let me explain something to you. Your boomer parents wonder why you have to take out a student loan. When they went out and went to college on a part-time job, they worked 10 hours a week on a part-time job, and they were able to pay for college with that. And still have money for beer at the end of it all. There's a reason that trope is out there, because they used to be able to do that. But 2 things have happened. One of them is, by the way, the devaluation of the college degree. That's been coming out of this, which is why we see grad school coming up so much in people's profiles, and people going to school now until they're 30, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. But yes, your boomer parents could pay for college with a part-time job, and it all comes down to butts in seats. If let's say the Supreme Court actually got up on its laurels and did its job and realized that student loan, the FAFSA, federal student aid, student loans, Pell Grants, all the rest of this is illegal, which, by the way, it very much is. By the Constitution, all of this is illegal. If they went through it, dug through this far enough and found that all this stuff is illegal, let's say they did it today. An emergency session was put forward. They sat down, they ruled on this, and they found out that, oh, hey, student loans are illegal. Student assistance is illegal. When they come from the federal government, the private banks can come and do this. But the federal government backing this is illegal. First off, if you were to get a student loan at all, you would have to be going into a high-paying STEM field. They wouldn't just give a student loan to anybody who's going into a gender study program. And second of all, you would see those prices plummet to the basement almost immediately. You would still probably have to pay full price tuition if they did all this tomorrow for spring semester 2023. But by fall semester 2023, those classes would be so cheap you could pay for a semester of college cash, because it all comes down to butts in seats. And if they're charging $30,000 a semester, in some cases, for even state schools, you're not going to get butts in seats. End of story. You are going to get empty classrooms for a spring semester as people realize they can't afford it. And when the colleges see their bottom lines drop, and number one, they're going to streamline and get rid of a lot of their humanities departments. And the only way you're going to be able to go get a psych degree is if you're also concurrently doing a medical degree and you're going to be a psychiatrist. Not if you're just taking psychology so you can go work as an Olive Garden manager. You are going to see those prices plummet immediately. But another thing did happen when you started making it that everybody could go to college, and almost everybody had to go to college to get even the most inane, mundane jobs. I mean, I've seen grocery store workers where they say, where you look for the job and it says college degree preferred. But why? I'm currently on my second dealership parts department that I'm running with a trade school degree. Most people don't need to go to college, but because the requirement is out there for the higher ups out there, especially for the more advanced degrees that you used to be able to get with just a bachelor degree, now they're going in and looking for people that have graduate program. And now if you want to just be an average, lower middle class worker, you have to have a bachelor's degree. And if you want to have any sort of better life out there, now you're looking at PhD, doctorate, master's, something like that. There's always going to be another step up for them to separate the chaff out of the field, and your first 4 years of your bachelor degree basically become grades 13 through 16. You see where I'm going with that? Nobody's addressing the root cause of the problem, which is the high cost of post-secondary education, said Rep. Virginia Fox of North Carolina, and ranking member of the House Committee on Education and Labor. This is basically a band-aid to the problem. Well, Virginia Fox, even though you have an R next to your name, you are the problem. The government putting the money out there and backing the student loans that everybody has to go and get off this means that the colleges can charge whatever they want, and the government's going to make sure that it gets paid for. So they can just kind of start throwing the price up a little bit more every year, and the government's going to continue to pay for it. And when the government stops paying for it, then they're not going to get all their money. End of story, plain and simple. And no, there is no free college. There's taxpayer-paid college, which again, as I said before, turns into grades 13 through 16. Required for everybody. Alright, let's talk. We got a few more here to finish up. And then we'll do Twitter trending and head out of here for the day. This one coming out of Los Angeles. Mayor Bass taps hotel rooms with estimated 40,000 people living homeless in Los Angeles. Why is the government permitted to tap private industry to go deal with a problem that the government created, you would ask? I don't know, if I was a hotel owner, I would tell Karen Bass to go shove it. Although, if I was a hotel owner in California, I'd be so indoctrinated and so brainwashed that I'd probably think it was a good idea. The new mayor of LA, Karen Bass, said Sunday her admin will start moving homeless people from tent encampments into hotels and motels through a new program that launches on Tuesday. During an interview on Meet the Depressed, Bass told the program's host, Chuck Todd, that her plan to move homeless people into rooms immediately will not address everybody, but it is going to address, hopefully, a significant number, she said. People will not be forced to move, but that sanitation crews will stand by to clean up areas after people have left. Okay, who pays for the hotel room? And here's the other problem. What happens to the price of lodging in Los Angeles? Once again, when the government's paying the bills, you put scarcity into the market, number one, because there aren't going to be enough hotel rooms to house all the homeless people, plus all the people that want to go and visit beautiful Los Angeles and its needle-covered streets, number one. And number two, when the government's paying the bill, the hoteliers can go raise the prices because they know that they'll get paid. Once again. But this is not coercing people, this is not ticketing people or incarcerating people, this is moving people from tents to hotels or motels, she said. On her first day as mayor, Bass declared a state of emergency on homelessness. She vowed to get people housed and more housing built so that residents can see a real difference, which hasn't been visible despite billions spent on programs to curb homelessness, including $1.2 billion in the current city budget. Bass, a Democrat and former congresswoman, has said she intends to get over 17,000 homeless people into housing in our first year through a mix of interim and permanent facilities. An estimated 40,000 people are homeless in Los Angeles, a city of nearly 4 million. Homelessness is hugely visible throughout California, with people living in tents and cars and sleeping outdoors on sidewalks and under highway overpasses. I think, by the way, that's more than the city of Eau Claire. I mean, that actually might be low at this point. Because the last time I remember knowing what the population of the city of Eau Claire was in 2002 when it was about 30,000. I remember because my fiance at the time was worried about me moving to Kenosha and into a bigger city that was about 90,000. Oh no. It's 69,000, and I guess it was higher than that in 2002 as well. About 70,000 people live in Eau Claire right now, so that's, again, much bigger than I thought it was going to be. But 40,000 people that are homeless, that's bigger than some cities in Wisconsin. Let's see. Bass said outreach workers will try to coax people indoors. People are homeless for a variety of reasons, including mental illness, addiction, and job loss. And the fact that trying to buy a house or even rent a one-room flat in the city of Los Angeles is about 10 times what it is anywhere else in the country. From what I understand, and this is from, again, talking to Britt, who used to live in Los Angeles, if you got a place about the size of this little closet that I live in here, this 500 square foot closet that I live in here, you'd be looking at least 4 figures a month. I mean, you're not far off from that here. I would say, just from the last estimates of talking to people that live down there, a place like this is $2,000 a month in Los Angeles. And the only reason you really can make it is if you're either a Hollywood celebrity in Los Angeles, or you own some sort of business that actually requires you to have good, sunny, moderate temperate weather year-round. My cousin does that down there. Again, not going to say the company, but I have a cousin who does work with racing in California, where, again, it's very important and very beneficial to him to have good, sunny, 70, 80, temperate, dry weather year-round. Those are the only kinds of people who can make it in that environment. From the Blaze. Epstein victim claimed to have copies of blackmail videos of convicted pedophiles, wealthy associates, newly unsealed email state. Well, again, let's go. It's kind of hard to believe that Ghislaine Maxwell got sentenced to a prison term for selling underage prostitutes to absolutely nobody. From Paul Saka. An alleged victim of Epstein claimed that the disgraced financier recorded blackmail videos of wealthy associates according to newly unsealed court documents. The 2017 deposition from Epstein victim Sarah Ransom was released earlier this week, igniting new questions into the allegations of sexual abuse of underage girls. Ransom's deposition was taken for Virginia Giuffre's lawsuit filed against Ghislaine Maxwell. Ransom was reportedly introduced to Epstein in late 2006 by one of his female associates who approached her at a club. Shortly after meeting Epstein, Ransom allegedly traveled to the infamous island in the U.S. Virgin Islands and one of his apartments in New York City. Ransom claimed that she started receiving treatment from his psychiatrist. Jeffrey's psychiatrist described me lithium, Ritalin, and there's bipolar prescription drug that's also prescribed to me by Jeffrey Epstein's psychiatrist, Ransom said in her deposition. According to Inside Edition, I can't remember the exact name of the bipolar drug, but I was started off with lithium and Ritalin. Ransom said a side effect of the lithium was weight gain, which became an issue for Epstein. Maxwell ordered Ransom, who was 5'8", model to keep her weight under 115 pounds. Weight was a massive issue for Ghislaine and Jeffrey, so the lithium just didn't work for me. I mean, I put on weight quite quickly, Ransom said. The weight restriction boiled over one night at Epstein's Little St. James Island. I can't remember the specific conversation, how it went. We got into an argument about my weight. Quite a heated argument, Ransom remembered. I recalled it getting overheated, and then I ran off and tried to swim off the island. I wanted to get as far away from Jeffrey and Ghislaine as possible. A search party was assembled, and Ransom was brought back to Epstein. Ransom alleged that Epstein controlled how women looked and dressed, as he purchased all the clothes and cosmetics. Ransom said all the outfits they were clothes provided on the island by Jeffrey, which were all Victoria's Secret clothing, bikinis, and nightgowns. Victoria's Secret was previously owned by Epstein's former client and associate Les Wexner. During her 6 months with Epstein, Ransom claimed that the convicted pedophile, would record videos of his associates having sex with his stable of women. She asserted that Epstein recorded the tapes as blackmail. In newly unsealed emails, Ransom wrote, "When my friend had sexual intercourse with redacted and redacted, sex tapes were in fact filmed on each occasion by Jeffrey. Thank God she managed to get a hold of some footage of the filmed sex tapes, which clearly identified the faces of redacted and redacted having sexual intercourse with her," the email claimed. Frustratingly enough, Epstein was not seen in any of the footage, but he was clever like that. Ransom alleged the email that her friend sent her footage of the threesome sex act. She also alleged that she backed up copies of the tapes on USB sticks and kept them hidden from multiple European locations. Ransom asserted that she told a single individual when the secret videos were located, in case anything happens to me before the footage is released. Well, I guess we'll see. I don't particularly have any faith in this, but this is because Epstein and Maxwell, by proxy, went down for the sins of the elite of the world and still went down for selling underage prostitutes to absolutely nobody. Some Hollywood news, which I don't get into very often because I've never seen a movie in my life. Including this one, by the way. I've actually never seen The Terminator. I think I've seen parts of it, but I've never seen the whole thing. The Terminator franchise might be back again, according to James Cameron. Oh my God, make a new movie. Like, seriously, make a new movie. Get something new. Quit rebooting the same franchises over and over again. From Germaine Lucier. When the Terminator said, "I'll be back," he really truly meant it. The Terminator franchise has been rebooted more times than you can probably even remember. Not counting Terminator 3, which itself came out over a decade after the legendary second film, Hollywood tried to bring the franchise back with 3 separate iterations, as well as a full season of a television, and yet even when those projects are good, they don't catch on. But don't forget, I'll be back. While promoting his new movie, Avatar: The Way of the Water, director James Cameron subtly mentioned that there's talks about maybe bringing the Terminator back again. Talking on the Smartless podcast via playlist, Cameron said the following during a talk about artificial intelligence. "If I were to do another Terminator film and maybe try and launch that franchise again, which is in discussion but nothing has been decided, I would make it much more about the AI side of it than bad robots gone crazy," which, kind of what it was in the first place. But you also have a problem with that because you'd be basically taking The Matrix and redoing it. Whoa, James, way to just drop that in there. We do know that a Terminator animated series is something that's been talked about for a year or so, and that the controlling company, Skydance, certainly doesn't want to waste its valuable IP, but talks of a new film, one that reboots the series from a new perspective. Now that's exciting. Then again, 2019's Terminator Dark Fate was exciting too, for the first time since 91's Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Both creator, James Cameron, was on board, as was star Linda Hamilton. Arnold was there too, but he'd been in every theatrical iteration to date. All the pieces were in place, and yet despite solid reviews and a great story, the film fizzled at the box office. Well, most everything is fizzling at the box office at this point. For the fifth time in about 20 years, it seemed humanity had defeated Skynet. In terms of the Terminator franchise, it seems history is destined to repeat itself over and over again, which honestly is maybe the most Terminator thing about the franchise since 1991. Now, here's the thing. If you take the Terminator out of it and do another story about AI going awry, and you can make it legally distinct from the Matrix, you actually might have something on here, but stop trying to hang your IP onto this. I mean, no matter what, if you direct it and you make it some sort of apocalyptic sign about humanity going too far, people are going to ascribe it to the Terminator no matter what. But you actually have the potential for a new movie here, which is something that I don't say about Hollywood very often. You actually just take the Terminator out of it. And again, this was the thing that frustrated me. And I am in the minority on this one here. I have said, much to the chagrin of many of my friends, if you would have taken the name Ocean out of Ocean's 8, you actually had a very decent heist movie with a different twist to it, with it actually being women. That movie was good. It wasn't Ocean. It was a good movie, though. I know a lot of people didn't see it because Moammons, but they had to go back out there and use that Ocean name for marketing in a property that could have very well easily been legally distinct from the Ocean's franchise and still been good. And I hate to say this. I know a lot of people went to see it just because it was an Ocean's movie. I mean, that was the reason that I went to go see it. But I'm willing to bet, and it's the same thing with what's going on with the Terminator here. If you would have named it something completely different, taken, I can't even think of what her first name was, but Ocean's sister, changed her last name, and taken all the scenes with Danny Ocean out of that movie, more people would have gone to see it. It was a good heist movie. It really was. It just wasn't an Ocean movie. Plain and simple. Alright. I got just two more here. This and this are both in the same vein, so I'm going to see how deep Axios goes into it, and we might have to go over to Insider and get a little bit of extra info off of this, but let's see what Axios does. Adult film industry warns Senator Mike Lee's obscenity bill could ban online porn. From Kim Bojorquez. Well, I guess my first question here is, what's the downside? Let's take this down just a bit. This playlist, because it's Christmassy, we put it up here, but one of the things to keep in mind with this playlist is the fact that it is very, very volume inconsistent. But this is from Kim Bojorquez. Mike Lee introduced a bill last week that would redefine obscenity under the Communications Act of 1934. It would define it as content that depicts actual or simulated sexual acts with the objective intent to arouse, titillate, or gratify the sexual desires of a person and lacks artistic or scientific value, according to a summary of the bill released by Lee. Yes, but some porn industry leaders fear it could criminalize online pornography in the U.S. What's the downside? Background: obscene materials are not protected by the First Amendment. Federal and state courts determine whether content is obscene by using a three-pronged approach called the Miller test, named after the 73 U.S. Supreme Court Miller v. California. The test asks whether the average person would find the material taken as a whole appealing to a prurient interest, whether it's depicted in a patently offensive way, and whether it lacks serious literacy, artistic, political, or scientific value. Still waiting on that downside. Under the Miller test, according to the bill's summary, obscenity is difficult to define, let alone prosecute. It would basically criminalize 99% of nudity and sexually explicit content. Mike Stabile, Director of Public Affairs for the Free Speech Coalition, a trade association for the adult entertainment industry, told Axios. Stabile said the bill is tremendously scary for sex workers who create adult content online. And by the way, these are actual sex workers. Not a girl who has 4 subscribers on her OnlyFans who makes $20 a month by showing pictures of her boobs. These are actual sex workers. Stabile said he doesn't believe the bill has a chance of moving forward, which is a fair point, by the way, but said people should take it seriously. Well, the government's trying to ban things that I don't like. You should take it seriously and get rid of all those evil stuffed shirt Republicans. And it's a part of the reason that this story is coming to light. Now, again, I'm actually on the side of, yes, this probably should happen, but I don't like the government's involvement in it. And most anybody who watches this now, which I think it's just Grant is here right now, or watches the replay of this later, knows how I feel about the federal government getting involved in things. You've got a customer base who's willing to pay for it, or get hooked on it for free in the case of internet porn. And the service aspect that's willing to provide the service, then there shouldn't be a problem. But that being said, I also understand the problems that come with having this kind of content out there and being readily and easily available from a website that just says, oh, are you sure you're 18? Okay, yeah, you said yes, you're good. But as Grant pointed out as well, there's really no support for this bill except for the fact that Axios and people like Axios want to come out and scare the hell out of people who say that those stuffed shirt Republicans are going to ban everything that they don't like. And we can't ever let them get into office. We're only allowed to ban things that we don't like because you're not supposed to like those things either. And no, I don't think it has a chance. I don't. And I do wish more parents would take a more active role in making sure that this doesn't get into their kids' hands. Because that's the actual base part of it, not letting the government get involved in it. But, I mean, who can trust? How many parents do we have out in this country now? 110 million parents to go do the right thing all together at the same time? That's not going to happen. All right, and our last one here is a little bit of entertainment. I wanted to include this yesterday, but we ran out of time, and we needed to go watch the Game Boys at the end of this, which we're going to be going over for the Porch Boys on the YouTube side after this. But from the Blaze, the New York Times is under fire after a crossword puzzle published on eve of Hanukkah resembles a swastika. It's even going in the right direction this time, by the way. From Candace Hathaway. I should really be careful having this on the screen. This could probably get me banned. On Sunday, the eve of Hanukkah, the New York Times was slammed online for publishing a crossword puzzle that appeared to be in the shape of a Nazi swastika, Fox News Digital reported. The puzzle's constructor, Ryan McCarthy, described the design as a fun whirlpool shape. Yeah, that's how my alt-right friends describe the symbol as well, actually. They call it the friendship windmill. Caitlin Lovinger wrote in the Times article about the Sunday puzzle. I love the geometry in this puzzle, so many stair steps, and I feel it contributes to certain evenness of the solve. The puzzle's layout sparked outrage on Twitter, with critics baffled that the newspaper could miss the resemblance. Trump Jr. wrote, "Disgusting! Only the New York Times would get a Hanukkah going with this crossword puzzle. Imagine what they would do to someone who did this and was not ideologically aligned with them. that shoe on the other foot. And while he's right, then, I mean, that argument always falls flat on people. I'll give them the same benefit of the doubt they would give those people. Exactly 0. Lawyer and Blaze TV host Mark Levine posted on social media. Meanwhile, on the first night of Hanukkah, the anti-Israel New York Times, or he said New York Slimes, issued a crossword puzzle that looked like a swastika, of course. When pointed out, they claimed it was a coincidence. What a sick, sad history. And basically, as Don Jr. pointed out, yeah, when it was the Odal rune, which people didn't even know what that was. There were so many people out there. Oh, well, this is a well-known symbol of Nazism, and this completely unknown battalion in Germany used this Odal rune on their uniforms. And yet nobody had seen this thing ever before it became the CPAC stage. Nobody got the benefit of the doubt off of this. So, God, I can't believe I'm about to say these words. Please, Lord, help me through this trying time. Give me strength to say these words. Don Jr. is right. And no, there should not be any benefit of the doubt for these people. All right, let's look at Twitter trending and head out of here for the day. Head over to the Porch Boys. Explore. Trending. No, I don't want that. I want the trending tab. Not what was on my bookmarks. Trending today. Merry Christmas to all is #1 trend. That is right. Christmas is this weekend. I hope that you didn't have to move on a whim like I did in December. And you were able to provide Christmas for people. I don't get paid my first paycheck for my new job until the day before Christmas Eve. I have no shopping time, and I still have to be here until 8 o'clock that night. So I think everybody understands. I don't think there are going to be any hurt feelings this year. I hope there aren't going to be any hurt feelings this year. But yeah, there was no chance for me to do anything at this point. So, Merry Christmas to all. Let's look at some of the tweets that are in here. They also say it's Mariah Carey season. Mariah Carey joined me tonight to ring in the holidays with a 2-hour special on CBS. No thank you. MAGA, thanks and Merry Christmas to all. Being pro-life is one of the most important and meaningful positions humans can take and live by, says Daniel F. Baranowski. Mariah Carey is apparently giving this concert right now as we speak. So that's what's going on right now. And by the way, does anybody not notice the fact that, this has nothing to do with Mariah Carey? That's why. I was about to say, is the symbol of her concert really the Masonic symbol? But no, this is coming from Victory Lodge 4009. Never mind, that was a false alarm. All right. Duke, trending with Wake Forest. The further society drifts from the truth, the more it will hate those who speak it. Selwyn Duke. Hayden Clarkin says, remember when Central North Carolina was going to build a 17.7-mile light rail system to connect multiple universities and cities together, and Duke University killed the project because of electromagnetic interference? Does anyone know if this is a real thing? I don't. Duke's Mayo Bowl. For immediate release, both coaches have confirmed they will have a Mayo bath if they win. So I think that this was supposed to be something that's going on with Duke and Wake Forest. Looks like their basketball game, but I think it got hijacked by a bunch of other things that had nothing to do with Duke. Oh, that's interesting. Random thing of history. A gun made for Francesco Morosoni, Duke of the Venice, from 1619 to 1694, pulled the silk bookmark and shoot while the book is closed. Based. All right, number 3, Sammy Blaze. Intermission report. F. Sammy Blaze. End of report. It's too bad the Rangers don't have someone they could plug into this lineup that could have impacted the bottom 6 over Sammy Blaze. Like, imagine if this team had someone like their version of Julian Gauthier. I don't know who Sammy Blaze is. Looks like something with the New York Rangers, though, so baseball, MLB. No, I'm sorry, that would be NHL, because the New York Rangers... I was thinking the Texas Rangers. So apparently something bad happened in hockey today, and as much as I think it would be an interesting sport to watch, I've never sat down and watched a hockey game before. I don't know why. It seems like something I would enjoy, but I don't know why. McConnell is trending, probably for the reasons that we found earlier. Mitch McConnell is helping Dems pass a bill that's over 4,000 pages. Think anyone's read it. And Ukraine gets another $45 billion because, well, other than insider trading, how else are these worthless government parasites supposed to turn $174,000 a year into $40 million fortunes? Marjorie Taylor Greene. Mitch McConnell is on the verge of giving the Democrats everything they want by working with Schumer to pass through a $1.7 trillion omnibus bill with huge increases in spending and changing the way Congress counts presidential electoral college votes. Republican senators vote no. And Murkowski requested the 19 earmarks totaling over $60 million in the $1.7 trillion, 4,155-page omnibus bill. Sticks responding with a quote tweet saying, "Gotta kick back some of the $9 million Mitch McConnell spent getting her reelected in a GOP versus GOP race, which the party physically could not lose." Steve Hilton says Mitch McConnell has blocked the Republican House, which won the election, from influencing next year's budget. So much for McConnell's endless lectures about protecting our democracy. He just undermined it. Did this pass? Did this pass while we were on air? It does not look like this is passed. This is still unveiled, so it doesn't look like it's on yet. And yes, the video that we saw earlier, Stilettos and Shotguns, says providing profits to military weapons contractors that they own stock in is the number one priority, according to most Republicans right now. Fix that statement for you, Leader McConnell. The Republicans passed a bill in 2017 that people who earn under $75,000 will have their taxes raised in 2021 and every 2 years after that until the year 2027. That is false, by the way. I did read the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and that is actually false. But it did have a sunset, which I didn't like. All right, and our last trend for the day is Georgetown. Some more college basketball stuff, guessing. A statement from the family of Lewis Orr on 12/15/2022. Orr was called home to be with the Lord. As his battle with cancer has come to an end, he was a dearly loved and devoted husband, father, grandfather, brother, and friend. He will be forever missed. F. So it looks like the Georgetown announcement is more about the passing of a former coach. And less about what's happening with UConn right now. So we're getting ready to get into March Madness time as the college basketball is starting to pick up and heat up. So maybe I'll make a bracket this year. Who knows? But that is the end of our Twitter trending for the day. Let's head out of here for the day. What do you say? We'll go over, if you're on the YouTube side, we'll watch Porch Boys. I won't take you over there because YouTube doesn't have a mechanism for doing that. If we're on the Twitch side, because for whatever reason their technical producer doesn't know how to set up an account other than YouTube, Well, then we'll just have to go over and do it manually here. But let's throw some outro music up and head out. All right, so thanks everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat. Everybody who came with. It looks like we were busy for a little while there. Still trying to get the struggle back and get into this new time slot. Get more people to come and join. Tell some friends. Get some people over here. I know I'm starting to see some West Coast people here, so liking to see that. And we'll see you here tomorrow for more news, more headlines, 6 p.m. Central Time. For more contemporary. Definitely looking forward to seeing that and reading the news of the day to the loyal followers here. If you're on YouTube, head over and check out the Porch Boys podcast, which is going on right now. I'll be over there in the chat with you guys. A little bit scant at the beginning because I'll be making dinner here right away, but definitely go and check them out. They're great friends and always happy to go over and see them. Otherwise, stick around on Twitch if you're over on that side, and we'll go find someone to raid as well. Not sure who that's going to be. But we'll see you here tomorrow for more of the news and more contemporary. Definitely looking forward to that. Definitely looking forward to seeing more chatter here and more people in. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.